Hey friends, this is Joseph Maynor. So what I want to do in this video is I want to talk about what I call my extended spiral stages. And these stages are not part of the spiral dynamics model, but they're stages that I've basically developed on my own as part of my own theory. And as you guys know, if you've been following my work, I don't really see like a huge distinction between spiritual enlightenment and development work. I think that there's a little bit of spiritual enlightenment and development work. There's a little bit of development work and spiritual enlightenment. They're not separate from each other. So, what I want to do in this video is I want to talk about post-turquoise extended models. Because as you know, spiral dynamics stops with turquoise. I actually view turquoise really as kind of like the first advanced state on the path, just because a lot of people really aren't at turquoise. Like they're not even at yellow, right? They're still in tier one. They're still linear thinking. Oftentimes I see like stage orange pretending to be stage coral or stage green pretending to be stage turquoise, these kinds of things. So you have to, you have to get very clear, first of all, as to what spiral dynamics is saying. And there's plenty of videos on the internet as to what spiral dynamics is saying, right? That's not what I can do in this video. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to give you guys my extended spiral model. And this is something I've talked about in prior videos, but I felt that they were not, they were too spread all over the place. So somebody would have to like cobble together, everything from all these different places to try to figure out what I was trying to say. So I think the better thing to do would just to be to make one video, which is going to be this video, summarizing these so that people who are interested in this post-turquoise path that I'm proposing can have it all in one place. So, just to review turquoise a little bit. I mean, this video is not going to be on turquoise, so I'm not going to spend too much time on turquoise, but what I want to do is I want to just kind of introduce this extended spiral model, and then we'll fill out the post-turquoise stages on their own. So that's how we're gonna go through it. So let me just I got some notes here, some outlines. I actually made an outline for this video, guys. Right? Surprise, surprise. I mean, a lot of my videos have been improvised. This video is still going to be improvised, but I made a detailed outline just so I don't come off as wasting anybody's time. So, turquoise. This is the feminine, the metaphysical. The theme is dissolution of the personal self into the cosmic whole. The focus is on non-duality, mystical union, and yes and no thinking, paradoxical thinking. Like if you're not thinking paradoxically, you're not at yellow and you're definitely not at turquoise, right? Now, coral gets a little bit more linear in thinking, but you don't get to coral unless you've integrated turquoise. We'll talk about coral later. Coral is not part of the spiral dynamics model. It's part of my extended spiral model. So going back to turquoise again, the feminine, the metaphysical, the theme is dissolution of the personal self into the cosmic whole. The focus is on non-duality, mystical union, and yes and no thinking, or what we might call both X and Y. The core insight of turquoise is that you are and you aren't what you think you are. You are and you aren't what you think you are. The qualities of turquoise are deep intuition and sensitivity to interconnectedness, acceptance of paradox and subtlety, emphasis on the relational nature of being, but still with a spiritual, metaphysical flavor. And the shadow of turquoise, which kind of makes it like not the final stage, like, there's always a stage after in spiral dynamics, and even in my extended model. The shadow of turquoise is that it can drift into vagueness or detachment if not grounded in the human. See, this is one of the first metaphysical stages where you're questioning ego, you're questioning the human. You're seeing that, like Spinoza would say, that there's a deeper link that exists than just yourself as an isolated individual ego. In other words, you can hear people say this sometimes, like there's no separate self, right? The ego is an illusion. So what's happening is that the thought or the concept of the human existing as an individual on its own is being questioned. And reality is seen to be a kind of network of nodes that are linked into a larger thing or relation or whatever, however you want to think about it. But fundamentally, the ego becomes at issue at turquoise. And the ego is seen to be limited. So the next stage that I propose, so that's where spiral dynamics stops, is with turquoise. The next stage that I propose is coral, which is masculine and metaphysical. And the theme of coral is absolute truth and radical clarity. The focus is on awakening, consciousness, and the realization of the self with a capital S as absolute. The core insight at coral is consciousness is absolute truth. The qualities of coral is pursuit of the ultimate metaphysical reality. Coral can feel complete, final, and definitive. This is what's tricky about coral, because sometimes coral can look like it's like orange, where it's really kind of definitive. But you gotta be careful of like orange people pretending to be coral and actually people who are truly at coral, right? Coral has a strong masculine energy. It's individual, node-focused, and decisive. Think of Shankara, right, as a good example of coral. Advaita Vedanta, not Neo-Advaita. Neo-Advaita is more turquoise, kind of mixed with green. Coral is more Shankara, right? Now, the shadow of coral is in the sense that what makes it not the final stage is that it's dismissive of the human, the relative, and the shadow. It can fall into spiritual ego, hierarchy, and I am done thinking. Like, oh, I've found God. Now I'm going to come down from the mountain and teach everybody God. Not realizing that that's a stage, my friend, right? That's not the end. See, and I'm not talking about God as in religious God. I'm talking about God as the metaphysical God, the Indian God. God is Brahman, right? And so the next stage beyond coral is teal, which is feminine and integrative. The theme of teal is integration of the human and the divine, and of the masculine and feminine. So when you hear people talking a lot about the masculine and the feminine, oftentimes they're integrating teal. And the focus is on healing, shadow work, depth psychology, and relational integration. So the core insight at Teal is that the self with a capital S and the self with the lowercase s are married. The masculine and feminine are vehicles for wholeness. Qualities of Teal: deep inner work and self-acceptance, emphasis on the relational journey, self with a lowercase s to self with an uppercase S, self to others. Feels like the integral octave of Spinoza's cosmic love raised through Jungian integration. So Jung is very much the archetype for Teal. And the shadow of Teal, though, the reason why it's not the final stage is that you can get stuck in endless self-work or shadow chasing. Integration is a hamster wheel, right? And so the next stage after Teal is Mauve, which is masculine, transcendent, and not even. So the theme of Mauve is transcendence of all frameworks, even integration. The focus of Mauve is the realization that all constructs, including spiritual and development ones, can be dropped. And the core insight of Mauve is that integration is a hamster wheel you can step off of, and not even. So the qualities of Mauve are Zen-like detachment and freedom, humor, lightness, and playfulness about existence, masculine completion energy, the willingness to drop everything. So the shadow of Mauve, though, what makes it not the final stage, is that if earlier stages aren't integrated, Mauve can become, well, it can't. Mauve is not going to be a Zen devil, but if earlier stages aren't integrated, Zen really can become a Zen devil. And it can manifest as spiritual bypassing or nihilism if misapplied. And then the final stage that I have filled out is Emerald, which is feminine, aesthetic, and romantic. So the theme of Emerald is life as art, beauty as the highest form of truth. The focus is on love, creation, inspiration, and the romance of living. The core insight of Emerald is the main course is your life. Everything is creation and beauty. Those of you guys who have watched my last video is really Emerald, right? The qualities of Emerald are spontaneous inspiration and the desire to share rather than teach, alignment of life, work, and love with beauty, seeing the sacred in small, ordinary things, like a chipped tea mug or a spider in the corner. Romantic and relational, driven to create for and with others. Now, the shadow of Emerald, the reason why Emerald isn't the final stage, is that Emerald can drift into sentimentality or lose grounding in practicality. And so the next stage that I have, which is a masculine stage, which I'm not going to include in this video, is Dusty Rose, which is Emerald needs the balance of Dusty Rose to integrate its artful openness. And I'll do a separate video on Dusty Rose once I get more clear about it. So these ones I'm really clear about, so that's why I'm doing a video on these. But Dusty Rose would be the stage after Emerald. So guys, I'm halfway through the video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break, and then we're going to deep dive these even further, the extended stages. So we're going to talk about Coral, Teal, Mauve, and Emerald. So just give me 1 second. Okay, friends, welcome back. So what I want to do is I want to kind of recap a little bit. So what is spiral dynamics? Spiral dynamics goes through stage beige through stage turquoise. And you can watch videos on all of these stages on YouTube. So I'm not going to make videos on those. Those plenty videos on those. Turquoise is the one that I have a little bit more of an idiosyncratic view, and that I think Spinoza is kind of the archetype for turquoise. Neo Advaita a little bit, but mixed more with like stage green, kind of a joining with stage green in turquoise. Coral I see as Advaita Vedanta in the form of mostly like Shankara, right? Teal I see as Carl Jung. Mauve I see as Zen. And emerald, I don't really have like an archetype. I don't have like a philosopher that really embodies emerald. Took me actually a little while to get clear about emerald, but I've gotten the clarity now. So, and my last video actually really is very much kind of a stage emerald video. So if you guys watch that one, but so let's go through these in a little bit more detail. So spiral dynamic stops with turquoise, which is very much about realizing that the ego or the separate self in a certain way is an illusion. Not entirely, but it's the first stage where that becomes an issue. And those of you guys who have worked on spiritual enlightenment work, you probably know this, right? I mean, turquoise is a very common stage for a lot of people to integrate. Coral is also pretty popular for people to get to. It's a masculine stage. I call it the breakthrough. So the theme of Coral is radical transcendence. The modality is cutting through illusion with raw force. The philosophy is Advaita Vedanta, 5-MeO DMT, non-dual realization. The experience is ego collapse, I am pure consciousness, timeless, spaceless identity, formlessness recognized directly. So I know a lot of you guys, you're very aware of this, actually. I mean, I'm just kind of codifying it as part of the path. I don't assume that the path has an end. I assume that in part, I assume that there's a marriage actually between the finite and the infinite. So it's not like you get to a point where you're completely unconditioned. And, it's just, that's not my experience of it at all. Like, I see it as like, these are also just concepts, okay, or words. As you move on beyond Coral into Mauve, you'll start to see this. So the next stage after Coral, what's the shadow of Coral? Nihilism or disconnection from life, right? Because you're assuming that the ego is an illusion. There's no separate self, these kinds of things. You don't see your own shadow. You don't see your own ego. And dangerous, if not integrous. See, that's the problem. That's why you need Teal. I'm getting this weird pop-up here. Just get that out. Hopefully that didn't appear in my video. So stage Teal, or the feminine, I call the integrative relational depth. So the theme of Teal is the self in relation. The modality of Teal is relational spirituality, inner mastery, deep shadow work. The philosophy is Jung, integral theory, internal family systems. the experience of Teal is consciousness reintegrates as a human being in the world. This is what Advaita Vedanta people at Stage Coral just are never going to get. They don't want to accept that consciousness reintegrates as a human being in the world. You go back into the dream as consciousness, and you marry the dream with the soul. Develops holistic self-mastery, mind, heart, body, spirit. Harmonizes love, work, and inner truth. Now the shadow with Teal, and I was integrating Teal for the last few years. I mean, those of you guys who have been following me online, a lot of the work that I've been doing for the last few years has been on Teal, actually. Reintegrating Teal after just getting frustrated with Coral. So, but what's the shadow of Teal, though? This is what a lot of people don't talk about, right? Well, the shadow of Teal is that you can overanalyze the self and relationships. Emotional entanglement if boundaries are weak. All right. So this is why Teal is not the final stage. Like, you need to move into, you need to shed a skin and move into the next stage, which is Mauve. So stage Mauve is masculine, and it's what I call the return to silence. So the theme of Mauve is embodied presence. The modality of Mauve is Zen, effortless awareness, meditative living. The experience of Mauve is life becomes simple, whole, and serene. Presence without a need to do. Inner emptiness becomes a gentle companion. Inner emptiness becomes a gentle companion. Now, what are the shadow side of Mauve? Well, risk of detachment, drifting into the practical, kind of having an anti-philosophical attitude somewhat. It can feel purposeless without emerald integration. So emerald is the next stage, which is the most recent stage that I've been integrating and talking about. Not formally with you guys yet, and that's why I'm making this video, because this is the model. This is exactly the model. This is my model. I'm not shoving this down your throat. I'm not telling you this is the truth. I'm telling you that I developed this model from my own path, doing this work for a long time. So, and I encourage you to develop your own models if you think that they're necessary. A lot of people don't like models. They'll tell you that actually models are the wrong way to go about things. I love these people. Actually, I don't. It's like I love them, and I don't love them in equal measure. I don't love them because I think they stunt themselves with their negative attitude toward theory. And they think that somehow theory doesn't go with spiritual enlightenment. And one of the premises that I've had since I've really started this channel and this work a long time ago is that intellect mastery is definitely a part of the path. But it's not like there's one form of intellect that always holds. It's a paradigm shift after a paradigm shift after a paradigm shift after a paradigm shift. So be careful with thinking that you've reached the end. And be careful of thinking that I'm right. You do you know what I mean? You do what you think is best. But what I've done is I've created a model that's, to me, it's just very beautiful, and it reflects my path. And I I wouldn't say that I'm a thinker necessarily. I'm more like an intuitive, but I do have a background in philosophy. And so I'm not against thinking. I'm not against emotions. This is just me creating. And if it's interesting to you, then great. If it's not something that resonates with you, then change the channel. You know what I'm saying? Go listen to somebody else. There's plenty of people out there doing videos on spiritual enlightenment and development work. But I know that people who like me, they probably appreciate a video like this. So the next stage after Mauve is Emerald, which I've been reintegrating, but also integrating lately too. This is the one that I think I'm at right now. And sometimes I'll go back to earlier stages, like, I was reintegrating stage green quite a bit over the last year, starting my business. And so I was kind of stuck in green for a while. And then before that, I was in teal for a really long time, and then turquoise. So, I'm constantly shifting back into other stages too, but I got a clarity as to what emerald is that I haven't had before. So the theme for emerald is a feminine stage, and the theme is conscious creation. Life as art, love as legacy. The modality of emerald is creative contribution. Relational leadership, conscious business. The experience of emerald is you bring consciousness into action. Coaching, music, teaching, projects. Life purpose emerges naturally as an expression of love. Everything becomes an artwork or offering. Just watch my last video where I invert the truth, love, beauty duality. And I show that actually beauty is on top, and then love is in the middle, and truth is on the bottom. Very stage emerald. So, but what's the shadow of emerald? Well, emerald is vulnerable to disappointment if love or impact isn't received. And emerald needs periodic mauve/teal reflection for balance. So, in summary, guys, if we look at the flow between coral, teal, mauve, and emerald, coral is the cosmic I am breakthrough. And you see a lot of people at this. The cosmic I am breakthrough. Teal is the integration into self and relational life. So you see a lot of people at this too on the path. Mauve, silent embodied wisdom. Emerald, loving creative contribution. So the way that I would describe emerald is conscious creation. And this is actually what I've been obsessed with for really the last year. You can see it in my videos on this. The weird thing is I made my first video on emerald like a year ago or 2 years ago. In that video, I was like seeing the tail of the ox of emerald. But what happened recently is I got a clarity with emerald as really emerald is about being a creator writ large. And it comes after mauve. So emerald is not hung up on truth or even on love. Emerald is about beauty. See? Beauty being placed above love. So, and then the proposed stage that I have after Emerald, which is a masculine stage, is Dusty Rose. I'm not going to talk about Dusty Rose because honestly, I'm not confident yet that I've filled it out adequately to talk about it, but these stages I'm pretty solid about. So I wanted to make this video just summarizing these. Hopefully this helps. Understand me at least. You do you. Don't react to me if you think what I'm saying is wrong. It doesn't matter, right? But it's important for me to create this as part of my creative process as somebody who is a light on the path. At least I think I'm a light on the path. Other people might disagree, but so be it. They think they're a light on the path, and that's all that matters to them. So thank you, friends. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.